Here's an excerpt from The Man-Eaters of Tsavo by Lieutenant Colonel J.H. Pedersen. In the whole of my life, I've never experienced anything more nerve-shaking than to hear the deep roars of these dreadful monsters growing gradually nearer and nearer, and to know that someone or other of us was doomed to be their victim before morning dawned. Once they reached the vicinity of the camps, the roars completely ceased, and we knew that they were stalking for their prey. Shouts would then pass from camp to camp. Beware, brothers, the devil is coming. Pedersen, of course, was writing about the man-eating lions that were attacking railway workers in East Africa, and it was his job to hunt and kill those lions. His account of this adventure was first published in 1907. Now, more than 100 years later, most of us think about hunts for man-eaters as a thing of the distant past, or maybe as fodder for a Hollywood movie. But that's not always the case. I'm Editor-in-Chief Alex Robinson, and today on the podcast, I'm interviewing Scott Haugen, who is a longtime outdoor writer and hunting show host. First, he's going to tell us a story about hunting mountain lions at close range around his home in Oregon. He recently called in a cougar there to within just a few paces. And that story is going to lead us into another big cat hunting experience that Haugen had in Africa in the 90s. And that one is a true tale of hunting man-eating lions in the modern world. All right, Scott, I think to get us into this hunt, we have to understand the terrain in which you are hunting. So just to start out, could you kind of describe the area in which you live and where you're hunting these mountain lions?
Yeah, and that's a great lead in, because so many people who hunt cats out west, you think of sagebrush country, big open mountainsides, pretty much just close your eyes and there's your visibility, that I'm dealing with, except it's green, not black, right?
Yeah.
So I'm on the western side of the Cascade Range, about 500 to 2,500 feet elevation, where I'm hunting these cats. Not, they're not high country cats. A lot of these cats are down in the river bottom of the McKenzie River Valley, to be specific. They're a lot of them are killing sheep, house cats, dogs, getting into people's goats, but getting a lot of deer and everything up in the mountains too. So where I'm hunting, it has been logged off about 15 years ago. It's probably a square mile, maybe a little bit more, area where these cats move down. A couple ridges come to meet on this area, and it's a really good travel route for them year round. So it's taken about 3 years to learn it and this cat movement. But honestly, over 75% of the time when I'm going after these cats, I'm hunting with the shotgun. I'm expecting, when I'm calling them in, shots to be, 10 or 15 yards, really close stuff, really brushy. This time of year in the spring and the summer, you get a lot of green leaves from maples, from cottonwoods, a few oaks. But most of the heavy cover is about 10 to 15-year-old Douglas fir reproduction, we call it. And this reprod is what's really thick. And underneath that reprod, it's not an old enough forest yet where it's been mature enough to kill out the foliage growing underneath it. So there's a lot of ground cover. And 95% of that are blackberry bushes. They're thorns, and they'll be anywhere from 2 to 10, 15 feet tall. A lot of times you're crawling underneath that. Most of that is just impenetrable. You can't get through it. It's all big, dense, heavy thorns. And so you're basically hunting game trails coming out of there. There are some 2 tracks coming off of there, ATV tracks, old logging roads. Most of the logging roads are overgrown now to the point where you can't even walk down them. So the visibility is really, really slim. Sound on windy days, on rainy days, doesn't really travel a long way. We used to live in Sumatra, Indonesia. In fact, I was on a man-eating tiger mission there one time, and it's just dense primary jungle, right in the rainforest. And this is very similar to that habitat. A lot of friends in the industry come out and hunt blacktails and Roosevelt elk, and they really don't realize how dense the brush is out here, and in mountainous terrain too. It's not flat country.
Yeah, I think the takeaway there is you're going to be close enough to shoot them with a shotgun a lot of the times. I think that really will drive the point home for folks. Are there a lot of mountain lions in this area? Because this is kind of like semi-rural, maybe where like the wilderness kind of meets human habitation. Is that kind of right? Or
Yeah.
like, are there a lot of lions around?
Yeah, 15 minutes from here, you're hunting, big blacktail elk, bear, high up in the Cascades. We're not far from snow right here, so we're not real high, but these cats travel a long way, and we're right on the edge of basically like wilderness private logging companies, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of acres of that, and that's where a lot of these cats are coming from, and it's ridiculous the number of cats in here. I currently have over 80 trail cameras out. About half of those are targeting cougars. I've had them in our yard. 2 weeks ago, I was out of town, and we had 3 different cats moving through our yard. And we live out in the country, and they left piles in the yard. I was gone, and so I missed it all. But what I think was happening is there's a female in heat up in the mountains behind us. And I was catching her on trail camera every day. And I think there were 3 different toms that were running around here. And myself and other buddies who have cameras in these areas, probably a 6-8 square mile area. We were all catching these toms on the move. And at the same time, there were some sheep. There were 7 or 8 sheep that were killed right across the river from us, not a half mile from where I'm sitting right now. So there's a lot of activity happening right now in this place. Just all my trail camera work in this area over the last 3 years where I killed this cat, a lot of cats start moving through there this time of year. I think that's due to the food sources that we have there. A lot of green up on these logging roads, and that's going to bring out a lot of rabbits, a lot of squirrels. I get more cougar killing small game animals on trail cameras than I do, killing deer. I know they get the bad rap for killing deer and big game, but I find them very active in our area, getting squirrels, house cats, dogs, nutria, rabbits, things like that. And the one that I called in was actually hunting down a gray fox, and that's kind of what brought it on the run right at me. So there's a lot of food, a lot of smaller food sources out there for them.
Gotcha. Okay, so lots of lions. It sounds like kind of everyone in the area, everyone in the neighborhood is like kind of seeing them, or has some mountain lion stories. But how do you go about hunting these things? Like, can you broadly describe your strategy? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not legal to hunt them with hounds in Oregon, right?
Correct. In Oregon, they used to be classified as a predator. You used to be able to hunt them with hounds. When I was a kid, in fact, I killed my first one with hounds, back in high school, college. I did killed a bunch of sheep. We got on it pretty quick, had a full stomach, didn't go far. So we can't do that. We can't bait them. If you find a kill, a domestic sheep, we have a lot of depredation tags that are given, or permits that are given to people, because there are a lot of livestock kills in this area. So you can get depredation kills, and they can issue special tags for those that allow people to hunt at night. I don't have any night optics or anything to do that. A lot of the good cat guys around here, guys that are way better at this than I am, they kill a lot of problem cats at night. And if you find a deer kill or a kill site, you can uncover it just to verify what it is, but you can't relocate that. So in other words, if I find a deer kill, which I've found before, I track it down and find it, and then I can open up a shooting lane to that, but I can't relocate that. You can't chain it to anything. It makes killing these cats really hard. Because that and no hounds. So to narrow it down, I first started running trail cameras for about 2 years. I ran just standard trail cameras, and I was checking them, 2 to 3 times a week. And I got the pattern of these cats down. I knew that, May, June were busy months, a few in July. August is a really busy month for cats in the area. August, September. And then there's kind of a lull until around like January, February, and early March again. So they really make cycles through here, especially the big toms. There are 2 big toms. The tom I killed was a mature cat, not a big cat, not a giant. But there are 2 bigger ones in the area. And as soon as they pop up, I recognize them. I mean, there's no question about them. Either one of them, they're just giant male cats. And a lot of times they don't hang around an area a lot. But what I found that, I was usually trying to check cameras, like I say, twice a week when I was home. I'd go pull camera cards from, 8, 10, 15 cameras, come home, look them up, document where the cats were. It's like, 2 days ago, 3 days ago. And finally, some of the guys who, like I said, are better at this than I am in the area, they're like, dude, you got to get cellular trail cameras. You got to set them out. And as soon as you get one to pop up, go ahead and, get on that thing, and you can't waste any time. And of course, so I did that. Tried several different cameras, ended up going with some multi-mobile, they're Edge Pros. I could manage those programs and the settings a little more from home. I can, foliage starts growing. I can block out some of those areas, with some of the smart settings. So it allowed me to, all the updates were digitally, so I didn't have to go in the field. So it allowed me to keep track of what was going on, in the woods every day.
Yeah.
The frustrating thing is the first probably 6-8 times a cat popped up on those, I wasn't home.
Yeah.
And especially in the daylight, it's like, oh my gosh.
Right.
But it became a game changer. It gave me the confidence, that I now knew, because my calling lanes are so narrow. Especially when they're running roads and running trails where I could use a rifle to call them in, instead of a shotgun. So just having the confidence that, that I'm there when the cats can hear me, that's the biggest thing. It'd be like going out duck hunting. You can go set out in the middle of the best marsh and, blow your call all day long, but the best calling in the world and your best decoy spread isn't going to pull them in if the ducks aren't there to hear it and see it.
Yeah.
And that's what I felt like, almost every time I went out there for the cats. But at the same time, it's such thick cover, you just don't know, they could be sleeping, feet from you,
Yeah.
So you just don't know. And I like that. I like that about hunting the predators in thick cover. There's just that element of uncertainty, and your senses are just on a whole different level when you're calling a cat in. If it's coming to kill you, kill the prey. That's fun stuff. I like that.
So you're like, when you are home, now you've got all these cellular trail cameras out. You've kind of got an idea of, where the cats, where they move through their different travel routes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you're basically just like a doctor on call, just like waiting. You're just like waiting to get the right message. And then when you get it, then you like fly out there and try to call the cat in and shoot them. Is that's the basic strategy?
Exactly. Yeah. So I have my phone right here, and I'm supposed to be working, but I'm looking at notifications, bing, bing, bing. So honestly, this is like the bat cave, right? So in fact, my gun is right there.
It's right behind you.
Where to go? Right there.
Right.
Okay. So it's ready to go. I have a change of clothes, and you could ask my wife. I'm a little addicted to this. So I have a change of clothes upstairs, and that change of clothes changes with the seasons, right? Okay. So this cat the other day, I was on a phone call for like a half hour, and it's like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? And I got off the phone, looked at my notifications, and 2 minutes prior, a cat was there. So I was like, boom, my gun was there, went and threw it in the truck, went up and changed. And within 3 minutes, I was on the road going to that cat. Yeah. So it was really fast. I had my hot weather, gear on underneath it. It had been misting, so the ground was kind of wet. So I didn't know how long I was going to be there. It was 2:18 in the afternoon. So, I was going to sit there till dark and call if I had to, and it's dark, 8:30 now. So I was going to be in it for the long haul. So I had everything ready and got on it. And this cat in particular, the camera that I caught it on, I knew it was going to be traveling down one of two roads. I caught it right at a fork, and I didn't figure it'd take the low road because it was the middle of the day. We had a big ice storm here in January, and it just pummeled a lot of the habitat. And a lot of that on that lower road, it's still really hard to navigate. There's not a lot of green up there. There were hundreds of trees down across the road. It took us months to open that area back up there. In fact, some areas are still not open. So I figured it'd take the upper road that had greened up, where I'd been seeing quite a bit of food. And I figured, if I could get there quick, this cat had about a quarter mile of this trail to go on. And I figured if I got there quick enough, I could call it down that thing. And it was basically a T intersection. So the cat was coming down, and it was just going to come to a T section to another, 2-track that I was on. And I figured if I hit it right, I could pull that cat out And I placed an electronic collar, a Fox Pro, on the other side of this road, 30 yards from where I was sitting. Figured the cat had come out, turn away from me, go uphill towards this call, bam, done deal, right?
Yeah.
And if I was too late, if the cat got on something, again, chances are it would have turned uphill. So it would have come down that track, turned uphill up the other track. And then I figured I could have called it back because I was, so close to it. Yeah. So so I basically got set up. And again, it's brushy, really brushy where I'm sitting, but I have about a 50, 60 yard shooting lane where this track goes up, goes down a dip. And if the cat went by me, there was just a narrow hole where I figured it would come down. So I'd have, again, a pretty long shot there. And if it came down that road and turned, I'm looking at a 20-yard shot. So again, because I was more anticipating the cat coming into the electronic collar set on the other side of the road, I went with the rifle. Plus, I figured I could shoot out there to, I figured the shot would be no closer than 20 yards and probably closer to 50 yards.
Yeah. You put the collar out and then you just set up on the ground and tuck into some cover, like how you might, if you were turkey hunting or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I set the e-collar out on the other side of where this road was, walked back down, where the trail was, it was coming out, and it was pretty steep, hill that cat had to come down. So I put it up on put the e-collar on the other side of the road, walk back down. I have a little folding seat that I like sitting on, and you can sit with your legs out, and the pressure of your legs gives you back support. I have a pretty thrashed rotator cuff in my left arm, so I can only shoot, or my left shoulder, so I can really only shoot one-handed. So I have my tripod shooting sticks. I was sitting there. I knew exactly, where that cat was going to be at any point in time. My window was very narrow. So I got everything set up on the shooting sticks, and I had it at the perfect level where if I had to sit there for, 6 hours, right there, calling, I was going to do it. So everything was right there. Safety was off. Gun was loaded. Scope was on 4-power because it was close. And I just lit up the electronic call. I figured it was going to be, fairly close, and it had quit raining now. It was misting a little bit, but not very much. I was under some reprod. I was on the left side of this little trail going up. So I was underneath some of these fir trees right up against some briars. Couldn't really move much. The kind of the eerie part, once I started calling and I didn't really anticipate it, was, I turned the e-collar on and I went with crippled jackrabbit sounds first, just because they're a little raspier sounding than our cottontails. So started with that, turned it on, and I found myself looking down, the road behind me where it turned, the track behind me, because if the cat did go down that low road, it was going to come behind me. And I have a buddy who, this was pretty much his job for 30 years in Northern California, he worked for the government, killing problem cats. And he knew that I've been after these cats for a long time. And he always told me, whatever you do, never call a cat by yourself, never leave your back open. He said, so many cats I call in come in behind me. And so that was kind of going through my mind.
Good job listening to that advice.
Yeah. It's like, well, I like doing this stuff by myself anyway. It'd be more irritating.
Put this in context for a little bit for people who don't know a ton about mountain lions. They're not like a big bear or even like a rutting whitetail buck coming through the woods, right? Like they move essentially silently, right? Like you're not going to hear them come in. Is that true?
Yeah. And that's, again, this is the first cat I've called in 4 cats now, but this is the first one that I've killed. The other 2 I saw come in when I was hunting turkeys, calling turkeys. One was in a state where I couldn't hunt them, but it was so cool. The thing just snuck up right behind us, and it was one of the coolest things I'd ever seen, 15 yards from us. And it was there just like a house cat, you're at the bird feeder, sneaking up on a bird and the tail starts going back and forth. And it's like, that's pretty cool stuff. So yeah, so they come in quiet. And now, again, a lot of the guys that I've talked to who've called in more cats around here and killed a number of them, almost all of them said the same thing, that the cats come in super fast and within the first 2 or 3 minutes.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And I've spent hours up there over the last 3 years calling. And again, because it's so dense, I've had other guys say, gosh, they'll sit on the edge And I've had that more with bobcats that I've called in where they'll just sit and look. And I've had a number of guys said, oh, they'll more just sit and look, and then they'll just kind of stealth in. But the guys who I know who are best at it, the best at the calling, they're like, get on the cat right away, and those things will come in, super fast usually. So, it's like calling anything. There's no set rules. It's like a turkey, right? I mean, you could have them fly off the roost and land in the decoys, or you could sit there for 4 hours working the same bird. So, no rules to it is what I'm learning. So I got set up and called and like after about the third or fourth time looking back, I was like, holy crud, if this cat comes behind me, and I had the rifle and, I was set up facing that way. I mean, there's no way I could shoot if it came in behind me, but I figured I'd just scare it off if it came in,
Yeah.
So,
hopefully it doesn't jump on your back.
Yeah, right. Make a good story anyway. So I called for about 3 minutes, and I kept increasing the volume in case it couldn't hear me. And it was in pretty thick cover where I'd seen it, the road that I thought it was going to go, where I'd last seen it kind of heading that direction. And after a few minutes of nothing, I just muted the call. And I like using open reed calls a lot in my predator calling. So I had a Slayer elk. It's a open reed cow call, and you can just create a lot of different predator sounds with that. I've called in a number of bear using crippled bird sounds, bird distress sounds, just it's you can get a pretty loud, crisp sound with that. So I was calling left-handed, and I was in the gun right-handed, and just started calling, with that. Figured I'd just, give the e-collar break, give the cat, something different to hear. And I hadn't done that 20 seconds, and I still had the call in my hand. And a gray fox comes just darting out of that trail that I anticipated the cat to come down. And I've called in a lot of gray fox. And I mean, just, everything from here on happened in less than a half a second. Okay. So it's amazing how quickly your mind processes things.
Yes.
And it was real calm. I was never like nervous or shaking or, wondering, I was never questioning anything other than the times I was looking behind me. So this gray fox sprints down, and I just remember beautiful hide, beautiful bushy tail for spring. And, but its ears were back. I mean, its eyes were going, its mouth was open. It had been running. And I've called in a lot of gray fox and usually they'll come up to the call and they'll stop and, they're looking at it. And a lot of times they'll sit back and bark at it. You'll hear them barking quite often. You'll hear that in movies a lot. They use it for the eerie animal sound in the desert. A lot of those are barking gray fox, and
gotcha.
Even in non-gray fox area. But So I mean, I knew instantly that something was up with this fox, and so that was my first thought. Second thought was, my gosh, I'm glad that wasn't a lion because there's no way I'd be able to get on it that fast. So it came down this road, turned downhill, and came just right at me. I mean, as fast as a gray fox can run. I mean, just sprinting, straight at me. So I thought, and again, this just happened like bam, so fast. So I'd been calling like this was in the gun. I thought, well, man, I better see if I can find it in the scope in case a cat comes out that fast. So I leaned down, and I have a Trijicon AccuPoint, so the little illuminated, reticle crosshair. So I leaned down and I shoot with both eyes open. And right when I got in the scope, the cat was right behind it.
Oh,
and I'll just never forget. It was the coolest image I think I've ever seen in all my hunting anywhere around the world, was how fast that cat was coming. And I knew instantly it was the same cat because there was a really dark cat. I don't think I'd caught that one on camera before. If I did, it was one time at night. But it was a really dark cat, and just the thickness of his tail. You know how a cat uses their tail for balance? Mm-hmm. So it just came and made a perfect, like, slow motion circle and then just centered up. It was like, poop. And like, that was like the coolest thing I've ever seen, right? So it comes out, turns 90 degrees, just right at me, just right on the tail of the fox. And I'm looking at the cat, and the cat doesn't see me. The cat's still looking at the fox. And I'm there. I mean, I was there. I didn't have to move. And so immediately the cat's head fills up the scope. And I distinctly remember, seeing it like lunge forward and grab, take ground. And it went to 30 miles an hour. I mean, in 2 steps. It was just, this wasn't like a cat stalking, for a kill. It was already on an all-out sprint to kill this fox. And I just happened to call the fox probably my direction, and then the cat started hunting the fox.
It's like one of the National Geographic films scenes where the predator is like right behind the prey animal about to catch it. That's what you're witnessing coming at you directly. Coming
right at you. Yeah. Just right there. Yeah. And it's very high speed. I mean, I've been to Africa a bunch and seen lions kill. And when you see a big cat like that dig in and they're really going to kill, it's the power and speed is just, it's unbelievable. And so here I was witnessing it at ground level. I mean, the cat was actually above me. I was sitting down, on my hind end on the ground. And it was one of the coolest things I'd ever seen in my life. And so the cat took a second lunge and its head came up. And right when it came up, I just distinctly remember seeing the green dot of the acupoint just drop right below. As soon as it hit about its chin, I shot and immediately I jacked another round in, but I didn't even get another shot off. So I hit the cat at 16 yards, and it was just like it hit a brick wall, and it just hit, and its tail, its whole hind end just went right over its head, and its big tail came out. And I honestly thought, this is cool. I'm going to be able to grab it, I mean, it comes right at me.
You thought you were going to catch him? Like if you had shot a duck that was flying to you, catch it. That's what you're going to do with this mountain lion.
Yeah. And it was so close. I couldn't tell where the shot was, but I ejected. And I mean, obviously I knew it was a good shot. I knew I didn't hit it in the head. So I knew it wasn't going to be, dead right away. So by the time I could jack another shell in, the cat had turned completely over. And now it was 7 yards from me. I paced it all off after the shots and all that. So now it's 7 yards from me. And by the time I could even jack another round in and shoot, it was into the brush. The fox was three feet off my barrel when I shot. I mean, it was just it was just right there. And I don't think it went under me. I think it just jolted right off my barrel. It's probably deaf, wondering what the heck went on. It was right at the end of the gun barrel, but the cat went right in the brush after it. And to me, it didn't look like it had broken a leg. And I figured, it felt like a pretty good shot. I was kind of surprised it got up as hard as it hit.
Yeah.
So I got up and went and looked, and there was a lot of short white and gray hair, strung out for, 8-10 feet. Right where I'd shot. And I thought, oh man, I hit low brisket on it. But then I thought it had to have hit bone as quickly as that, animal tumbled and stopped it. And, still at this point, I mean, I was never really shaken, never really nervous. Again, it was, it happened so fast. I just love that element of hunting, predators like this, because it just puts you in the zone where nothing else in the world matters.
Yeah, it's not like you're sitting there checking your phone while you're waiting for the cat to come in. You have to be 100% focused, because it's only you're going to have a second to do your
phone. Yeah. In fact, and you're exactly right. And one of the things that I've been on multiple man-eater, experiences around the world. And one was a polar bear in Alaska. But there was one time when that was all over and I let my guard down. And I thought, you knucklehead, you could be dead here. And when I got up and I was looking at the cat and just trying to read, look for blood and looking at the fur and just trying to figure out, where it's at and where I might have hit it. The thing that you just said went through my mind. And, here I was in the scope, and 3 or 4 times I looked back for the cat like that, on the road behind me. And just that time, that cat would have been on me.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Just,
100%,
just that fast. So, for that, I was like, okay, my buddy in California was right. Maybe I should have brought someone but I didn't have, again, I like doing these things alone. I really like doing the intense things by myself, just because I don't want the extra distraction or noise. I know what I'm doing, and I just want to do it by myself and do the job.
And there's, it's a calculated risk that you take to do it by yourself, but there's obviously benefits of that too. So
yeah, it worked out good. Yeah, I was held at gunpoint with the cartel in a hunt down in Mexico not too long, and they said they were going to kill us. I thought, plane crashes, sunken boats, bear charges, lion, encounters in Africa, and I'm going to die with a bullet in the back of the head. Really?
Yeah, that'd be a bummer.
I know. It's like a cat would be way cooler to engrave that on the tombstone. But it worked out this time.
So, yeah, it wasn't this cat.
Yeah.
So tell us about the recovery. How'd you find it?
So the recovery, I started going into the brush and it was ridiculously thick. I mean, honestly, like a foot of visibility. I couldn't even see where the cat went in. I mean, I saw right where it dug, right on the edge of the track, right where it went into the forest, and that was it. I mean, there was not even a hole like that big for no trail, nothing, and it was all briars. And I went in maybe 3 or 4 yards. I took my rain jacket off and just had a cotton top on, so it would sweatshirt, so it wasn't noisy. And I started going in after it. And I thought, okay, I'm not afraid of dying, but I don't have a death wish, right?
Right.
So I thought this isn't smart. So I knew there's no way I couldn't even maneuver the gun, for a shot in case it was crippled. So I just backed out and I went down to the truck. It was not 5-7 minute walk down to the truck. And got my shotgun that I had there and had some double aught buck. And on the way, I texted a buddy who's Tyler Tiller. He's killed a bunch of cats around our neighborhood, and he's kind of known as the cat expert. He's who everyone calls, and he's helped me a ton, taught me a lot about cats and behavior and how to pattern them and so forth. And I just texted him and I said, hey, I just shot a cat, and I said, if you're around, I said, it's some pretty thick cover. And he's about the only one I know around here who I would call and kind of trust in a situation like this, because he gets it.
Yeah.
And he texted me right back and he said, shoot me a pin. So I did. I mean, by the time I got to the truck, he lives just a few minutes from me. He happened to be in town. So he met me there. So he came up with me. So we went in together, and that was actually really, really kind of nice. Just having that, I'm getting old. I can't hear much at all. And it was nice having a young kid to help me out here. So we just basically got on a track and we just kind of, we knew the thing was going to be going downhill. It was going into a ravine that was really thick cover. We just split up and started covering ground and looking for sign anywhere where the cat had, dug in, any blood, anything like that. And I found a track at one point and he was just 5 yards from me and I couldn't see him. It was such thick brush. And finally he found a drop of blood. So I went and joined him, and then we just kind of kept tag teaming. You keep an eye on the blood and, kind of follow it, and I'll look ahead in the brush and see if there's anything there. And it took us a little over a half hour to find it. We went another 15, 20 yards or so. And then that's when I saw the cat. It was laying up. There were a bunch of briars they were all from this storm we'd had. All the vines were pointing all in one direction. And there, right underneath it, there was I saw a horizontal line, and it was a different color, kind of a grayish line. So I just told him to, whoa, stop right there. And it was only, less than 3 steps from us.
Yeah.
Just laying in there. So it was, and it was dead. We found quite a bit of blood in there. So yeah, it worked out good. It was a lot of fun. And what's really cool is I went and in where we're at, I think it's a 200 cat quota in this part of Oregon where I'm at. And there hadn't been many killed, 7 or 9, I think less than 10 at the time. I took it in the next day and had them, pull a tooth to age it, and picked up another tag. So we can pick up a second tag in this area. It's open year round in our area.
Yeah.
And I'm actually on another depredation permit for someone else who's having trouble with cats killing livestock, so I can hunt on their depredation permit as well.
We'll be right back after the break. This experience is kind of just seems like it's maybe just fueling this obsession a little bit more. It's not like you got your one mountain lion and you're like, oh, I'm good now.
It's such a fun way of hunting. And I told my wife years ago, I said, man, we got into TV and did the big game hunting all around the world. That was how we made our living for 15 years. And that and writing. And I said, if there was a way to figure out how to make a living chasing man-eaters all around the world, that's what I would love to do. And this kind of started with a little incident we had in Alaska with a polar bear. And then with the buddy in Africa, that was his job, was problem animal control in Africa. And there's only one person I've ever met in my life who's like, I would love to write a book about you. And this was the dude. He was from my area, born and raised in Oregon, married a gal from South Africa, moved to South Africa, went to the government, job there. I went to the government, applied for the job, and this would have been in, late 1980s. And they said, "Oh, you're in charge of problem animals, right?" And he's like, "Oh, right on, mice and rats, work from home, take care of snakes here and there." And they threw him a little green book, and he still had the book, and it was How to Hunt Big Game. Can't remember the exact title, written in the 1950s. And he'd never hunted big game in his life, right?
Oh my
So the first call he gets, it was from a remote village, and a pride of lions came in and killed the king of the village, his wife. And so he goes out there, and of course, the book that he's reading is like, whatever you find the lions to kill, use that as bait because they will return. So he gets out there, and they'd half eaten her, but he puts the body out there, and not knowing, never built a blind, never did anything, and got in where it was open ground, where there were some anthills, and he just set up. He was here and she was 10 yards away, and he's like, well, as soon as they come in and start chewing on her, I'll shoot them, right? So it was a pride of 8 cats that came in, 8, big lions. And if you've ever seen an African lion, 300 pounds, as a female, 500 pounds as a big male, and they're unbelievable. They're the most amazing predators on the planet, I think. And so he ends up calling them all in at night, using predator calls to call them back in, and some are munching on the corpse, and he's shooting, and it goes on all night. He kills 4 and cripples 3. And that's a pretty common thing with a pride once they get on a kill like that, where they'll just keep coming.
Like even after you shoot, they'll come back.
Yeah. Pretty common thing. And he had just stories and stories like that. And they ended up killing 2 with spears the next day. And then he shot another one, the next morning at daylight. So he had tons of stories like that. And I was like, man, I want your job. That's really cool.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you went out to help him on one of these shoots. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, we did. We were living in Alaska at the time. This was, the early 90s, before the internet was even around, before cell phones. So we were shooting faxes back and forth. And I'd planned a plains game safari there. And he was sending me faxes. He's like, hey, he said, I'm on this pride of lions. He said, it's been, 2 weeks. They've been killing livestock and people. And he said, I can't get on them. So he said, if you can come here and try to help me sort these things out, because he said, I'm having a heck of a time with them. And so it was like a week before, now we're leaving Alaska, and he said, the lions just killed again. And he said, they're still around if you want to help me try to get on them. And he said, we have some problem crocodiles too. And so we land in Joburg. My wife was with me on this trip. We land in Joburg, drive north. We were up in the Limpopo, right on the edge of Kruger Park. Okay. And so we get to his house. It was like 1 a.m. And he's like dressed and has his bag there. And I was like, whoa. He said the lions just killed, right at dark. He said they killed someone. He said, we need to get to the village now and try to call these things in. So we get there.
Would you kind of, describe what these villages are like? Like, are these like farming villages with people like taking care of cattle and stuff? And where are the lions like ambushing folks? Are like the cattle or around the cattle? Is that kind of what's happening?
Yeah. So we drove. It was a few hour drive, and where this village was located was right on the border of Kruger Park. So this pride of lions were actually living in the park, coming out, killing, and then going back into the park. And even though his job was problem animal control, he could not go into the park for any reason.
Gotcha.
Because, you're not certain what cats, are and aren't killing. Any Cape buffalo that came out of the park, he had to shoot them because they couldn't get back into the park. All around Kruger Park are these villages that are into the animal husbandry, right? With the cattle, goats, whatever it is. So anytime the wild buffalo get out, there's a chance that they could, contract any of several diseases, and they don't want that getting back into the park. So, gotcha. He was killing 70 some buffalo a year, just on those problem things. A lot of problem elephants that were coming out of the park, getting into the crops of the people. killing people was a pretty common thing. You get a rogue bull in there and stomping on people, or they'd squash them with their heads. The people defending their little gardens, just tiny little gardens. And this village, because these cats have been after them for so long, they actually moved all of their fencing they had donkeys mostly in this village, donkeys and a few cattle and some goats, but they moved all of their fencing in tight to the village. So they were living with them because they were losing so much livestock. They're like, we've got to protect them. There wasn't a lot of wood there for them to burn, but they were burning fires to try to keep the lions away. And they would keep the fires burning all night long. And, people would watch and scare the cats off. When we got there, it was daylight by the time we got there. And we saw where they'd killed and they'd just gone right through all this fencing, right through all the people, grabbed a person out of the hut, dragged them out.
Oh my gosh.
And that, yeah.
So
that was
right in
much,
the village.
Right in the middle of them. No one could have weapons, at that time in any of the villages. So, they're trying to fend them off with sticks and rocks, literally. So my buddy was dealing with that whole thing, and I just kind of, stepped away and let him do his thing with that. And he'd known the people in that village for quite a while. He'd been working with them for, a few years, and stuff like this is pretty common over there. We don't hear about it much, but it's daily. There's someone dying over there from cats, hippos, crocodiles. It happens pretty often in these remote villages. You just obviously don't hear about it, can't hear about it, right?
Yeah.
So by now it's mid-afternoon. They got everything figured out there, and so he said, we'll stay here. We'll hunt the cats all night. So, and it was the same thing. They'd killed, went back into the park, and he got a donkey from the head tribesman there, and he said there was one tree out in this field that they'd cultivated recently to plant maize in. And so it was one tree. He said, we'll just build a blind. He said, we'll chain this donkey to the tree. He said, when the cats, come in, we'll use predator sounds to call the cats in. He said, when they come in, we'll just shoot, figure it out. So we got set up at dark, and it was cold. It was freezing that night. It was actually below freezing, which is pretty cold for Africa. So we started calling. It was dark then, middle of winter. This was late May. So it was dark. What kind of call do
you use to bring in a lion?
So he was just using again, just predator calls, rabbit distress. He was using a lot of livestock distress, goats, things like that they had around there. And, it was I think it was an old Johnny Stewart call, with the cords and, the tapes, and you plug them in and, string the cords out.
Tape, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So, and that's what it used in the past with success, and, so we started calling, and it was about 2 a.m, and it was just really cold. Nothing was happening. There were hyenas everywhere around us. And he said, he said, we can just go to sleep. And he said, the donkey will start kicking and braying. He said, it'll let us know when the cats are close. And it's like, okay. And I was just dozing off, and a lion let out a roar that, if you've ever heard a lion roar, I know for certain they can be heard for over a mile away. I've heard if the wind is right, you can hear them for 3 miles away. But this thing let out a roar, and it wasn't 10 yards from us. It was just right on the ground with us. And what in the world? Because behind us was the village. And, out there, that was the park, and that's where the bait was. It's like, how in the heck did this thing get by us? Yeah, or next to us, And so he just grabs my leg and squeezes, and obviously I know that means don't move or scream or anything. And so we wait, and the next thing we hear are bones crunching. And this cat, goes off eventually by us, and it kind of roars in and joins the pride. And I'll just never forget, my buddy whispered to me, he said, the donkey fell asleep. It's like, oh, okay. So that's why they killed it, and we had no clue. Not only did we not hear him kill it, it was 70 yards away. So we didn't hear him kill it, but it was dead, and they were feeding on it. And that was the first sound we heard.
Yeah.
And there were 4 cats. So he said, what happened is they came right in, one grabbed it by the mouth, one got it on the back, the back of the head. he said it was dead fast, and he said they got to munching. And he said that's like typical. He said it's not always a noisy commotion when these things kill. He said they're so efficient and they work so good together. And he said that's how they were coming into these villages. Just he said they'd be on people, going in between people who were standing watch, and they had no clue that the cat was even, in the village or in the hut type of thing. It was like just there. And that's one of the things that stood out with this cougar that I just killed. I didn't hear the fox coming. I didn't hear the cougar coming running full speed, 15 yards from me. I never heard it once. I never heard it going to the brush. The stealth of cats are pretty darn amazing. So
crazy.
So we have this blind belt, and there were 2 holes, right? And so he has a mag light, and he's holding the light, and I have a 375 government issue gun, which we shot that day to make sure it was on, and a little 4-power scope, and he turns the light on, and he said, whatever, just whatever shot you have, take it. So turns the light on, and there were 2 cats laying on each side of the body feeding. And we were shooting solid, so we didn't want to shoot, through one and have it go through and cripple the other. So it was 15 minutes of off on, off on, off on. Finally, one stands up and I shoot it. And the tree that it was under, I'll never forget this image, but, if you've ever shot a cat or seen a cat get hit on the highway, they're just like a spring, like bing, 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 right? They're just a ball of nerves. So I shot this thing and it did a complete jump and leapt, and it hit this branch that was way up in this tree. And I was like, holy cow, that was up there. Well, when the whole ordeal was over, I took the gun and I stood under that, and I could not touch. I held it way up above my head, and I couldn't touch the limb that cat, had hit, whatever it was, 12, 15 feet from a standing jump. I thought, man, that's some impressive power. So we call again. So that cat runs off. It's dead. Just double lunged it.
But you stay in the blind because you're like, we're going to get more. Yeah. He said, we'll just keep calling until we kill them all. And, so we call, and 3 minutes later, the other 3, or 5 minutes later, the other 3 cats, come running in. It's dry dirt and dust, and he has the light on now because we hear him in, and they just don't even care. They're just tearing this thing apart. And so I'm holding the light now, and he shoots. Same thing, hits it, double lungs it, runs off. We call 15 minutes later, the other 2 come back. It's like, are you kidding me? This is so cool. And so I shoot another one, and then we call for like 2 hours, and the next one won't come in. And this is like, this is the last one.
Yeah. And he said it won't be far. He said, let's just try to go get on it and see what we can find. So yeah, we only had the one gun. So he has the gun and I have the flashlight, and we're just walking across the field, basically walking. He said, we'll find it. And he said, it'll be laying there. And he said, you're going to see its yellow eyes. And he said, it's going to be laying on the ground, like it's going to pounce on us. He said, just keep the light on the eyes. He said, once you see the eyes, don't let the eyes leave the light. And that's his point of aim. Right. Yeah. So we're going in, and it was, again, just a dirt field, and we get into some grass that's, 6 inches tall, then a foot tall. Now it's 3 feet tall. And right in front of us, 10 yards in front of us, you can see these glowing eyes, these yellow eyes. And we both saw it at the same time. So I'm just rock steady on it. And he gets in the gun, and the eyes just disappear. Oh no. And I'm looking for it, and I can't see it. And I know it didn't charge because
you'd be dead.
Right. And then, it's dark, so I can't see him, but he grabs my hand and he just starts moving the light and moves it like about a 45-degree angle. And there's the cat right there. So I step around him, and he shoulders the gun again. And again, the eyes are just gone. I'm like, what in the heck? Gosh. And, we're not talking because we don't, want to alert it. I mean, obviously it knows we're there and it's not afraid, but we're not talking. And again, he grabs my hand and shines it back to the right. Like he knew exactly what this cat was doing. And this time I'd figured it out. And there were the cat's eyes, now about 90 degrees. And he whispered to me slowly, he said, keep the light on its eyes. He said, we're going to back out of here very slowly. And so we backed out, got in the field, and he said, we're going to go get someone from the village. He said, you're going to drive the truck. He said, we'll get someone in the village, get up on top and hold a spotlight. And he said, we'll drive right into the grass. And he said, you just follow the beam of my spotlight where I'm driving, And he said, when I knock on the roof, he said, just stop. So the cat was trying to get behind us, basically to kill us what was happening. Yeah. So we get there and I don't know where we're at. It's pitch dark and he knew exactly where we were. He said, we'll go right where we left the cat. And he said, it shouldn't be far. So we get in there and I'm sitting down in this Toyota little Land Rover thing, right? And it's all I can see is grass, like 6 feet tall now. And he knocks on the roof and I stop. And I mean, my momentum doesn't even stop, going forward. And there's a blast from the muzzle, right off the windshield. And I started opening the door because I, was going to say, Joel, I didn't step on the brakes that hard, because I thought.
You thought he shot accidentally. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, holy crud. And just as I'm opening the door, he shoots again. It's like, ooh, this is for real. And I look out the window and right off the hood, I can see the tail of the cat going like this. And Joel, by now, even though he was an Oregonian, he'd acquired a South African accent. And I get out and he said, that escalated quickly. And I was like, what? He said, didn't you see it? And I said, no. I said, I couldn't see anything. He said, oh, the cat was running full speed. And he said, I was just getting ready to jump right up over the hood when I shot it. And he shot it right between the eyes.
Oh my
God.
God.
Well, why didn't you let it come another 2 feet so I could have seen it? So, and then the second shot was just to finish it off. But those were all big cats. They were all big adult females, and that's pretty typical over there. He shot a lot of females that were doing the killing. He wanted the village folks. This ended about 4:00 in the morning. He wanted to wait till daylight, about 7, 8 o'clock, so all the village could see what was happening with all the shooting in the night. So we gathered up all the cats, put them in a pile there. The donkey was gone, so he had to pay, the king whatever the cost of the donkey was. And but he wanted everyone to see it. We took all the cats away because it was a government job. I was working with him. He was actually able to get the cats released to me. So I actually have one mounted over there and a rug of the other one. So that was pretty cool. But we skinned them out, and those were the first lions I'd killed. I've since killed other ones over there. But skinning them out, it was one of the most amazing things. They're just a ball of muscle. They're so solid. They're so lean. And when we got to where the head was, it just looked like you took 2 16-pound shot puts and just went pump, pump. And it's like, there's your jaw muscles. I mean, it was so hard to skin around it. And it was so dense. And I just remember how clean they were, how clean their teeth were, their gums. And we actually, we ate one of those man-eaters for dinner that night. We had some backstrap and then we kept a hind quarter, and cat meat's really good. And we actually took that meat and gave all the meat from the cats to another village who needed it. He didn't tell me if they were man-eaters that they were eating, but yeah, it was really good.
What does it taste like?
I would probably say pork. It's not a greasy meat. It's oily, not as oily as bear. The fat is a little greasier. It's not tough, but I'd say firm. A lot of people I've talked to who've eaten cat say, gosh, it's really tough. Like anyone with wild game or turkeys. Like, gosh, if I heard another turkey hunter say, oh, cook a turkey, throw away the plank or throw away the turkey and eat the plank, you're obviously overcooking it, right?
Yeah.
So same with cats. So cats, we don't age any cat meat. It's again, fairly oily. It's ridiculously clean smelling. My wife, when she was working on a big game cookbook, she actually gave some cougar to people to eat, and that was part of the deal. They had no idea what they were going to eat. They just had to report back what they liked. And a lot of people thought it was pork, like domestic pork, not even like wild pork.
Is it kind of pinkish in color, or is it really dark red? What's it?
No, it's a pale. It's pale like pork, more pink than red, more opaque than anything. I guess. It cleans up really well. Yeah, we had, oh my gosh, I think she made 8 different recipes with it over the next 2 days. So we ate a lot of it. Our boy had been in London for the last year, and he got home a few days afterwards, and he just grabbed something out of the fridge and ate it. He's like, oh my gosh. And I'd killed a turkey right after that too. He said, oh, I miss eating wild turkey. He said, this is so good. And Mom goes, yeah, you just ate cougar backstrap. He said, oh my gosh, that's so good. Oh yeah. So it's good. It's really good.
with the lions, is it like kind of taboo in Africa to eat like a man-eater lion, or is there something around that?
I don't know. My life's been pretty good.
Okay. So it did you didn't like put a curse on yourself.
No, I hope not. Yeah, I mean, he obviously the people in the village, he wasn't gonna, give the meat to them, but he, all of his problem animals that he got, everything, elephants, hippos, buffalo, everything went to villagers. They all just welcomed the meat because none of them hunted. Right. So even the man-eaters, all the man-eaters he killed, unless they were in bad shape and infected for whatever reason, all that meat went to other villagers.
I think this is my last question for you on this. To me, just like a Midwestern deer hunter, like these hunts just sound like there's such a high element of danger compared to the type of hunting that I'm used to. While you're doing it, does it feel like that? Like, are you scared? Is there any like fear that you feel, or is it, just describe it? Describe the experience that you're like feeling when you're hunting these things.
So that's a really good question. And I get people, like in general, they say, man, I bet you were scared. And it's like, you weren't, one time we had a plane engine blow up, a bush plane up in Alaska. And things weren't looking good. And I just remember how quiet it was. The engine was dead and we were sailing, and it was like, wow, this is like a really peaceful thing, and kind of the same thing, even with the cartel, when that was all happening for several minutes, and, I had a gun to my head and they said they were going to kill us. And, even at that point, there was no fighting, there was no resisting. And I was never like tense or really, I just knew there was no way out of it. But with the cats, and with the dangerous game, and I've tracked a man-eating polar bear in, 42 below zero, and killed it in the dark, and it had killed the guy, and I found the body. And I'd been on other jobs like this. It just puts you on a different level. And I guess I should back up a little bit. Like so many people listening to this, I grew up hunting deer and elk and, everything just like a lot of folks. When we moved to Alaska, things kind of went to a different level, out there, just the elements. I used to run a couple 100-mile wolf trap line. I'd had run in with brown bears and black bears, and, everything has always ended good. But when you're out there intentionally doing things like this, it puts you in a zone. And people, it's hard to explain to people who haven't been in that situation, but if anyone out there played college or high school football and you're playing in front of, 50,000 fans and things are happening and you're in the moment and you're the dude with the ball and you're running and all you hear is the wind going by the holes in your helmet. You don't hear the crowds cheering. You don't hear all the loud noise. You just know you have one job to do, and that's to get to the end zone, right? Mm-hmm. And with all this stuff that I get involved with, that's where I'm at. That's the feeling. It's like I am so in the zone. I think you could, drop a bomb by me, like when it's happening, and nothing's going to distract you. You're never scared. You're never nervous. You don't make a dumb move. I could have gone in after that cougar that I just killed by myself, but again, I'm married and have kids, and I like I said, I'm not afraid of dying, but I don't have a death wish, right? So you want to keep a level head with all of it. And I think that's why I like doing it by myself. These things, the bears and the lions and the tigers, the crocodile stuff that I've gone after before, because I know what I'm capable of. And again, I bring a lifetime of hunting experience. A lot, if folks don't know, for 15 years, I was hosting big game hunting shows on TV, and we were the first to have shows on Netflix and Prime. And, I was going on 67 big game hunts a year all around the world. So I got a lot of trigger time in, and killed a lot of animals. You're not going to ever hear me say harvest. I'm not going to hide behind the words. So I did what I was doing, what my job was. And so, I'm very familiar with animals and animal behavior. And that's what my, biology degree is in college. And, And, you know, I've got a lot of trigger time on a lot of big animals and a lot of dicey situations. So I know what to expect. I was never allergic to bees growing up. And you know, when I got stung, and I got stung a year ago, I was out spring bear hunting, and I was about 50 yards from the truck, and I got into a bald-headed hornet's nest, and I got stung 5 times, and I had an EpiPen back in the truck, and it's like, oh my gosh, I got to get to the truck. And I started writing, and I remember the doctor saying, okay, here's your EpiPen. You know, when you get stung, you keep it with you all the time, and whatever you do, don't escalate your heart rate, you know, until you get that shot in you. And it's like, okay, so I have to walk, right? So I'm walking, trying to stay calm. And that 50-yard walk, it was like, you know, in The Wizard of Oz, when it went from black and white to color, it was like, whoa, it was like that feeling of like euphoria. It was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to die before I get to the truck. But it was like my senses had never been on such a high as they were at that second. Everything was bright. It was beautiful. It was calm. I was happy. And with these man-eaters, and with this cougar, when it ended the way it did, that's the feeling you get with it. And it's not an addicting rush. You know, I don't go out there seeking the danger. It's, you know, there's a level of preparedness that puts you in a situation, and it allows you to execute with confidence, right?
Yeah, it sounds like it's the demand for like ultimate focus that you like. It requires you to use all of your focus and all of your senses and all of your skill, and like kind of a culmination of your hunting career is like hyper focused into this moment.
Yeah. And I think that's why of all the animals I've killed all around the world, this cougar was the most rewarding because of exactly what you just said. It was the coming together of everything, you know, how to work the rifle without thinking, how to set up for the shot, knowing where it was going to unfold, and then having literally that long to assess the situation and pull the trigger. You know, I never thought, well, I hope the cat stops and turns broadside so I can get a great double long shot on it, right? It's like, I've got to bust this thing or it's going to plow into me, you know, in 2 more steps. And just the working of everything, the mechanics and the gun, and knowing the gun was going to, you know, go off. And I mean, just all these things, having the range, having everything set up, and then being able to call it in, like we did, you know, that it was just very, very rewarding. It was a lot of fun. And the coolest thing is there's another cat back in that area. So I'm like on it, like right now. It's like, come on, show up in the daylight.
Well, Scott, thank you for sharing these stories with us. Very, very cool. And yeah, I hope you get on that second cat.
Yeah, thanks. Stay tuned.
The Outdoor Life podcast is edited by Mike Pedersen of 85 Audio. It's hosted by our editor-in-chief, Alex Robinson. And it's produced by me, executive editor Natalie Krebs. You can read Scott's full story at outdoorlife.com/maneaters. Music in this episode is composed and performed by Pier Locatelli via APM Music.